Paranormal Experience with me, Paddy. We're running a little bit late. A few technical problems we couldn't get on, but we're hopefully you can hear me this week, because I know last week when we began there was a bit of trouble and you couldn't hear me last week, but hopefully you can all hear me. And obviously if you were on Facebook, hopefully you can see me too, because obviously that's what we want. You couldn't hear me. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously Facebook decided to tell me that it wants to listen to me as well. Right, Diane says I'm there, so that's good. I'm pleased to hear that. So how's everybody been? Has everybody had a really good week? First of all, I must apologise because I got the dates wrong. It's not Saturday that we are out investigating. It's next Saturday. So we're not out this week on the 3rd. It's the 10th, I believe, is when we're out. I'll just have to check that. But it actually is, just to be sure. Yes, it's the 10th. So will we, because Aaron was getting a bit worried after last night's football game. He was like, we can't go. And I was like, well, why is that? He says, well, what happens if England get through the final? And I says, but it's the 10th, not the 11th, so we're all right. So even if England make it all the way through, which obviously, we're hoping to do, especially after last night's performance, then obviously we will be there for the investigation on the 10th. So, but we'll keep you informed about that. So I'm going to tell you some ridiculous and unusual laws from around the world. Just to lighten the mood before we get into some more of your spooky stories. And some of them are quite ridiculous. Others not so much. But others, some of them don't make sense. And you'll see what I mean as we go through them. So in China, it's illegal to use wordplay or a pun when advertising on television. Now, we would suffer greatly with that, especially something like the Sun newspaper, because they come up with puns all the time, don't they? It is illegal to ship live animals in the mail. Sorry, it's illegal to ship live animals in the mail as long as the animal is not dangerous, diseased, bad smelling, loud, and it's able to survive without giving it food or water. So any animal that you can ship, that you don't have to take care of during the journey, is legal to do. And I know this from when I used to do parcel deliveries, because I did actually deliver live fish, boxes of live fish. Obviously, they don't need looking after. Adult. Now, I don't know why it specifies adult incest, apart from, obviously paedophile and stuff like that. But adult incest is legal in the state of New Jersey, in the USA. Pepper spray is illegal in Canada. If pepper spray is used on another person, causing bodily harm or harming the environment, it can carry a penalty of up to $500,000, and you could be imprisoned for 3 years. It is illegal in many US cities to put money in an expired parking meter, whether it is your car or not. Now, I'm a driver. I park my car, obviously pay for the parking. I can't remember an incident ever where I've paid for somebody else's parking. Like sort of, when I mean, what I mean is walking down the street and going, oh look, his meter's run out, I'll put some money in. Um, the answer is apparently there are more fish go through Heathrow Airport than humans, going back to that mailing of animals. But like I say, I mean, these boxes, I think there was 3 boxes in total, and they had tropical fish in. Don't know how many, because obviously, my job was just to deliver them. Um, in the town of Bracebridge, in Ontario, in Canada, hooting and hollering was completely illegal until March 2016. Then they made it legal from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. But like this country, you can't sound your horn between the hours of 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. Now, before we became technically advanced in the taxi business, that was how we used to attract people. We used to pull up outside the door. I mean, there's probably still taxi drivers who do it. We used to pull up outside the door, sound the horn, and then people would come out. So even though it's illegal, it used to happen. I mean, I remember an incident, just speaking about my own, I pulled up outside of my address. It wasn't in the middle of the night, it was 8, 9 o'clock or something. And I sounded my own, and they didn't come out. So I waited, because you're supposed to give somebody 5 minutes, and then I sounded me on again. Then they came out, and they got in the car, and they said to me, which straight away proved that they were just messing me about, because they said to me, sorry, I didn't hear you sound your horn the first time. How did they know I'd sounded my horn twice? Because I didn't tell them I had. But never mind. In Alabama, it is illegal to wear a fake mustache that may cause somebody to laugh in church. So the wearing of the fake mustache is alright, provided nobody in church laughs at you. So as long as you don't have one of those big handlebar mustaches, you'll be alright. It is illegal to name a pig Napoleon in France. So there you go. It is illegal to tattoo in South Korea unless you are a licensed doctor. Automatics such as switchblades are illegal in many places. But in Michigan, one-armed people can carry them. So it's illegal for everybody else, but one-armed people can carry them. I suppose it's for defense. Because Americans obviously, they think everybody's out to attack them, don't they? So they, I could have me Second Amendment, could have me gun, this and the other, for protection for my family. So obviously the switchblade is exactly the same, or the flint knife as it's called. I mean, it's been illegal in England for a long time. Camouflage clothing. Now this is something that I totally agree with. It is illegal for anyone, even children, to wear camouflage clothing of any kind in Barbados. Now I've said this for many years. You can't, in this country, in the UK, you can't dress up as a policeman. It's illegal to impersonate a policeman. And yet you see all these people walking around with camouflage stuff on that have probably never seen the inside of an army barracks. And I do agree that it should be illegal to do that in this country too. But it is in Barbados. It was technically legal to kill Mormons up until 1976. So you could kill a Mormon in the US up until 1976, and you would get away with it. Now this one, just sticking with the paranormal stuff. In Canada, it is illegal to pretend to practice witchcraft. However, it is perfectly legal to practice witchcraft. So if you pretend to practice witchcraft, so if you dress up as a witch and, go about pretending to do witchcraft, then it's illegal. But if you actually do the, eye of a newt and tail of a lizard and all that, then you actually, it's perfectly legal to do that. It is legal to spay or neuter your dog in Norway except under specific circumstances regarding health, quality of life, or utility. I fully get that, and there's nothing wrong with that. Why should we decide about an animal? And on February the 20th, 1792, George Washington signed the Postal Service Act, which made it illegal for anyone to open somebody else's mail. Haggis is illegal in America because one of its key ingredients is sheep lungs. Now, I haven't actually had haggis for a few years, but I quite like it. In Hawaii, it's illegal to own a pet hamster. Now, when you're talking about ridiculous laws, and how do you police these ridiculous laws? In Singapore, you could be fined £150, and it has been known for police officers to check that you flushed the toilet. So you would get fined £150 or their equivalent if you didn't flush the toilet, and police officers have been known to check. So, yeah, who'd want that job, eh? Well, hold on a minute, you just come out the toilet, I didn't need no flushing, let's go and take a look. In Queensland and Australia, it is illegal to own a pet rabbit unless you can prove that you're a magician. So only magicians can have pet rabbits in Queensland and Australia. It is legal for pet stores in Beverly Hills to sell dogs and cats that are not from a shelter or a rescue. Now, that's a good thing because, some people buy dogs and cats and, we've seen it for many years, have we? Doggies for life, not just for Christmas and all that. So yeah, that's a pretty good law. In Wisconsin, children are legally permitted to drink at any age. There is no age limit for drinking alcohol, as long as a legal guardian. So not even the adult, they just have to be a legal guardian, gives it the okay. So if, I was to take Harry, my son, who's 2 in a couple of months, out, because I would be classed as his legal guardian because of being with him, then I'd give him alcohol if I was in Wisconsin, obviously. So there we go. I'll take me grandson Harry to Wisconsin. We'll have a day in the pub. In Idaho, it is legal for cyclists to treat a stop sign as a yield sign and a red light as a stop sign. This law is commonly referred to as the Idaho stop. So basically what it means is where you as a driver comes to a stop sign, you must stop and then proceed. Now it's always made me wonder that, you must come to a complete stop and then move off. But what is classed as a complete stop? That's something that I've always wondered. I mean, obviously a complete stop would be a complete stop. But what I mean is, how long does a complete stop last for before you move on? But if you're on a cycle, then it's just a give way sign, basically. It is illegal for Indian physicians to determine the gender of a fetus. So, in the UK, and I'm presuming the US, in places like that, when they do the scan, they can tell you what sex or what gender the fetus is. Now they're not allowed to do that yet, and this is due to female infanticide, because a lot of Indian families don't want to have female children. So if a doctor was to say to them, "Oh, you're going to have a daughter," then they would do everything within their means to abort that child because it was a girl. So it's illegal for a doctor to say so. Now, we've seen a lot of this, especially over the last year or something, more so after the George Floyd incident, about slavery and this, that and the other. And we've heard a lot from the US, from the BLM and this, that and the other. But it is still legal, slavery in the US. However, it must be as some form of punishment. So it's not legal to actually own a slave, but you can use somebody as a slave in the form of a punishment. This is known as the punishment clause. Now, it is illegal for drug companies to advertise to consumers almost everywhere in the world. The only exception are, yep, you guessed it, the US. But then again, New Zealand as well. So that's why you won't see drug companies advertising, the likes of paracetamol and stuff like that. Now this one, it's pretty self-explanatory. It is illegal to pursue, shoot, poison, wound, kill, capture, trap, collect, molest, or disturb a bald eagle in the US. Now I get everything except for, obviously the molest or the disturb. It's like I always say about these common sense signs, this floor is wet, or whatever, this hill is steep and stuff like that. It's because some idiot somewhere along the line has done something, for these obvious signs to be put up. So somebody somewhere along the line has molested a bald eagle in the US for that to be made law. So, yep, it takes all sorts, as they say. It is legal to bring a copy of the book Robinson Crusoe onto the kingdom of Elio. If you are found to have this book, your punishment is, and I've looked everywhere to find out why it's this specific period, and I don't know. There's nowhere actually says why. But the punishment for having Robinson Crusoe is 11 minutes and 17 seconds in prison. Now, I'm no speed reader, but there's no way you could read Robinson Crusoe in 11 minutes and 17 seconds. So I just don't understand why that is the law. If somebody knows, please let me know. In an online game, a player set up a game, a imitation bank in the game, and it was taking money. People will put money into this bank, like in the real world. It's a bit like one of these Sims sort of thing where you make money and you bank it and what have you. But in this particular game currency became real money. You could exchange it, but like Bitcoin and stuff like that. So anyway, this guy who set up this bank, he stole 790 billion units in game currency, which is nearly $170,000. but it was perfectly legal for him to do it. So he took all these credits off people, stole them. So, I mean, I suppose it's one of those situations where nobody was harmed during this crime because it was game units, so it was stuff that was earned during the game. So it wasn't people investing, so it wasn't people putting money into the game. It was people who'd obviously, earned it during the game, put it into the bank, but was then able to use it as Bitcoin or things like that. So therefore there was nobody hurt, so it wasn't a crime. It is illegal to smoke in cars with children, but the minimum age of the child varies according to the country. So, it depends on, babies will always be babies regardless of what country you're in. But each country has a different specification of what a child is. Like we, in the UK, you can get married at the age of 16 with parents' consent. In the US, the age of consent is 18. So anybody aged 16 is still classed, 16, 17, still classed as a child. But in this country, although we say 18 is an adult, there's things that you do at the age of 16, i.e. the age of consent, and also you get married, providing you've got your parents' consent. Now this should be across the world, never mind just in Iran, but mullets, the haircut mullets, are illegal in Iran. Like I say, that should be across the whole board, shouldn't it, rather than just in Iran, but there you go. Now this is another one of those strange ones that makes no sense. Being gay is illegal in Iran. That makes no sense anyway, that any country should make it illegal to be gay. But being transgender is fully acceptable. So once you change your gender, you must then only date the opposite gender. So if you were a man and you transgender to a woman, then you must only date men. So the answer to get round the whole gay thing is one of yous must transcend to being a member of the opposite sex. So if there's two women who fall in love, one of them must transcend to be a man. If there's two men fall in love, one of them must transcend to be a woman. And then it becomes perfectly legal. I don't know if I love anybody that much, but, you never know. It is illegal in California to drive a motorcycle between two cars. But apparently, there's only 53% of the residents actually know, it's legal, not illegal, but there's only 53% of the residents actually know this. So 47% of the motorcycle fraternity in California don't realise, and they sit in traffic because they don't realise they can actually wind through it. In Denmark, it's illegal to burn flags, except for Denmark flags. So you can't burn the likes of the Union flag, the Stars and Stripes, etc. But that you can burn the Danish flag, no bother at all. In Fairbanks in Alaska, it is illegal for a moose to enter a saloon. This law was created to stop a local tavern keeper from getting his pet moose drunk. So you must have obviously, going back to what I was saying about stupid laws and how they're brought in because people do stuff. This is obviously one guy who's had a moose who, has let it loose. There's a moose loose, but who's let it loose while it's just been drunk and it's caused loads of damage. In Pennsylvania, it's illegal to use milk crates for anything besides milk. Yeah? What else? Well, I suppose some of them use it for like orange juice and stuff like that, don't they, as well? It is legal in some states in the USA to collect rainwater. And the reason given is that rain belongs to everyone. So you have no authority to collect rain because it doesn't belong just to you. So even if it's fallen in your back garden, then according to the law, it still belongs to everyone else, as well as you. In Mexico, the act of escaping from prison is actually considered legal because the law recognizes that all people have a fundamental desire to be free. Well, what's the point in putting them in prison? Never mind. It's legal in Germany to deny the Holocaust, which I should think it should be. Mississippi is the only state in the US where it is legal to drive whilst actually drinking alcohol. So you can drive along the road and you can drink, providing the driver stays under the legal limit, which is 0.08%. So that's obviously 0.08% of your blood must be non-alcoholic. Non-alcoholic? Does that make any sense? A clothes shop in Beijing banned Chinese customers, and it's perfectly legal to do that. Apparently, Chinese women spend lots of time looking in clothes shops, but don't end up buying anything. So therefore, this shop in Beijing has banned Chinese people. Diane says, in Chicago, it is illegal to take a French poodle to the opera. Again, that's one of these laws that somebody has done at some point. And the French poodle must have, when the people are singing, either did the ooh, sing along to it, or started barking or whatever and disrupted, and that's why they've made it illegal, isn't it? British eggs are illegal in the US because they're not washed in chlorine, and it's the opposite. American eggs are illegal in the UK because they've been washed with chlorine. And that's the reason why the US keep their eggs in the fridge and we don't, because they have to because of the chlorine, whereas we don't because they're not washed in chlorine. I've never been to the US, so I've never tried an egg that's been washed in chlorine, so I don't know what it would taste like, if it makes it any different or whatever. But anyway, that's the law, that you can't have a. I mean, why would you bring eggs from the US to the UK, and why would you bring eggs from the UK to the US? It makes no sense. Unless there is a taste, and people have tried bringing them across or taking them across or whatever. In Ohio, it is illegal for foster parents to make their children who have opposite sex share a room. So, if you are the legal parents, then you're fine. If you're foster parents, then you can't do it. They can't share a room. So if you foster a son and a daughter, they must have separate rooms. In Switzerland, it is legal to own one guinea pig. You must buy at least two, because they're social animals and they're prone to loneliness. Now, I've never really had guinea pigs. When I was little, we've had guinea pigs, but when I've grown up, it's an animal that I've never really had. So I couldn't comment on whether they get melancholy if they're alone or whatever. Pinball was illegal for 30 years in many major US cities. Politicians thought that pinball was a game based on chance and therefore must have been mob run. The ban ended when a master pinball player was called in front of a committee and demonstrated his skill. So demonstrated that he was able to do it and it wasn't a scam. And the final one, the word outlaw originally meant outside the protection of the law. So that meant if you came across an outlaw, you could rob them or even go as far as to kill them, and you wouldn't suffer any legal consequences because that person was classed as being out of the protection of the law. So therefore, if you were an outlaw, then anybody could attack you and kill you. Strange but true. The answer is, yes, they need to be in groups because they talk to each other, apparently. This is guinea pigs. I didn't know that. Like I say, I know nothing about guinea pigs. I know nothing. And that was me really bad impersonation of him from 40 Towers. But yeah, apparently they need to be in groups because they talk to each other. Strange but true, isn't it? And on that note of strange but true, I'm now going to take a break and we'll have a bit of Cabinet of Curiosities. So here we go with tonight's first instalment of Cabinet of Curiosities, and I'll see you shortly.
Our world is full of the unexplainable. And if history is an open book, all of these amazing tales are right there on display, just waiting for us to explore. Welcome to the Cabinet of Curiosities. Sometime around 1914, Walter traveled across the Atlantic with thousands of other brave Canadians to join the fight at the start of World War I. For many, it would be a one-way trip, but Walter managed to stay alive for 4 straight years. In fact, no bullet or landmine would send him home in 1918. No, that would be blamed on something far more strange. He was on patrol in the area of Belgium known as Flanders Fields when a bolt of lightning flashed out of the sky and struck him off his horse. When his fellow soldiers found him, he was laying in the mud beside his dead horse, and half his body had been paralyzed. As a result, he was put on the next ship back to Canada to begin his recovery process. It would take Major Walter Summerford many years to become self-sufficient, eventually learning to walk with the help of a cane. But he was still young, still drawn to adventure, and still full of life. So when a group of his friends decided in 1924 to hike into the mountains to fish in a nearby lake, Walter happily joined them. I imagine the steep hike was grueling for him, but he kept up. Walter was a fighter, after all. But when they arrived at the lake, he decided to take a seat while his friends unloaded their gear and set up camp. Right near the water's edge was a tall tree, so he sat himself down against it under the shade of the branches. But the sun quickly faded away as a storm rolled in. When Walter's friends found him, he was laying on his side at the base of the tree, trembling and in pain. The tree itself told them everything they needed to know. A dark, smoldering streak ran down the bark, from high above all the way to the ground. It had been a lightning strike, and Walter, against all odds, had been struck again. Just like the first time, Walter seemed to have been paralyzed by it, and as a result, spent a long while in the hospital, doing his best to recover. It took him 2 years before he could walk again, but he did it. Like I said, he was a fighter, and giving up wasn't an option, so he pressed onward in life. As the story goes, Walter took a trip to a park in Vancouver in the summer of 1930. He was probably there with family, or maybe those same fishing buddies. We don't really know. But I have a feeling you could guess what happened next, right? Against all the laws of probability, Walter Summerford was struck by lightning for the 3rd time in his life. They say this one was the worst, or perhaps it was just so devastating because it was the 3rd time in 12 years that it had happened. Whatever the reason, Walter never walked again and spent the last 2 years of his life in a wheelchair. When he passed away in 1932, still very much a young man, he went to the grave as a member of a very special club. Lightning rarely strikes twice, but for Walter Summerford, it did that and more. You would expect the story to end there, wouldn't you? No more Walter, no more lightning, right? Well, not exactly. Because in 1934, just 2 years after he passed away, lightning did strike again in his hometown. Now, I know what you're thinking. Without Walter, where could it possibly strike? The answer, though, might be more obvious than you were expecting. It struck his gravestone, naturally. When the trapdoor of the gallows was opened, the entire crowd held their breath. They were about to watch an innocent man die, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. It was February of 1894. The person on the platform was a young man named Will Purvis, who had been sentenced to death by hanging for the murder of a local farmer named William Buckley. The trouble was, Purvis claimed he was innocent. He swore to it. Thanks to a bit of circumstantial evidence, though, the jury ruled unanimously against him. Purvis was stunned. He hadn't committed the crime, and yet no one believed him. Angry and bitter, he lashed out in the courtroom. "I'll live longer than the lot of you," he shouted. Regardless, on a cold February day in Mississippi, Will Purvis was escorted to the gallows for his execution. He was led up the stairs where a noose was lowered over his neck and then tightened, and then a black sack was slipped over his face. Finally, the trapdoor was triggered, and Will Purvis dropped to his death. Well, sort of. He actually fell a few feet and landed on the soft grass below the platform. The crowd glanced back up at the rope and immediately spotted the reason why. The noose had come untied. Sure, Purvis had a bit of rope burn around his throat, but he was alive and breathing. So the crowd went wild. The executioners tried to rebound from their failed attempt. They rushed down and scooped Purvis up and then hauled him back up to the platform where they reset the trapdoor. After a moment, though, they gave up. Maybe it was the nervousness of retying a noose in front of thousands of angry onlookers. Perhaps it was a desire to do things on their own terms at their own pace. Or maybe they could hear his words to the jury echoing in the back of their minds. Somehow, despite the odds, he had survived. So they tossed Will Purvis back in jail. He had already spent 2 years in prison waiting for his trial, and now he was back. He made an appeal for a new trial, but they denied him. He made another appeal and received yet another denial. This went on for 2 long years, all while Purvis had to endure hard labor alongside the other prisoners. But finally, in January of 1896, something changed. Actually, it was someone. Mississippi had elected a new governor, and when the new man, Anselm McLaurin, took office, he changed Purvis's sentence. The executioner's noose no longer loomed in his future. 2 years after that, enough evidence and public outcry had flowed in that he was actually pardoned. Roughly 6 years after his life fell apart, Will Purvis was a free man. 2 decades later, the true killer of William Buckley came forward and confessed, closing the case for good. Purvis went on to live another 4 decades. He never found himself back inside the courthouse or at the center of another murder trial. He eventually received a large payment from the state as restitution for his time in prison and lived a full, normal life. Will Purvis passed away in 1938, 44 years after his failed execution, and just 3 days after the death of the final member of his jury. Will Purvis, it turns out, was a man of his word.
So, was it coincidental that he survived past his jurors after telling them that he would, and that he was obviously an innocent man, or was there something more paranormal to it? That's the questions that we ask on this show. There is some things out there that, are quite difficult to explain. Now, obviously, with that, it could have been just a coincidence that he happened to die not long after the last juror died. But he had predicted that, so was it true? in the fact of he actually predicted the future, or, as I say, was it coincidental? Now, coincidence is something that, and I've said this many times on the show, coincidence is something that the skeptic uses quite a lot. Can it all be coincidental? That's the answers that we're trying to find. We're not here to debunk anybody and prove anybody wrong or this, that, and the other. What we're here for is we're here to find the answer. No, I don't profess to be the be all and end all about the paranormal world, but we are here to find the answers, and we may never find an answer, because it's one of those things that it is difficult to prove. We bought a spirit box the other day. Now, if you don't know what a spirit box is, basically it's, for want of a better word, it's radio, and it scans through the frequency. You ask it questions, it scans through the frequencies, and if a ghost or a spirit tries to speak to you, then the spirit box picks it up. And I'll mention this, that Aaron had said if anything comes through, he's off, he's away. The thing is, and I've said this as well, the place where we're going to, there shouldn't be any interference, because I've had a look and there's nothing to interfere. So there should be no electricity, there should be no interference from radios. So when the spirit box is scanning, if something does come through, it should be an actual spirit, etc. Because it's very easy to, when I was younger, there was the likes of Radio Caroline, which was the pirate ship, and you had to scan through on your radio and find this Radio Caroline, because it was a pirate ship. Not a pirate ship as in, show me timbers and all that, but pirate because of the fact of it didn't have a license to broadcast, but because they were out at sea, they could get away with it. And it was the station that everybody listened to. Nobody admitted to it, because obviously it was illegal to listen to it. But everybody, tried to scan into Radio Caroline and this, that, and the other. And it had the likes of Chris Moyle. He was on it, Chris Moyle from Radio 1, who used to do the breakfast show. He was on Radio Caroline. Not for very long, because it pretty much sank. Not long. I'm not saying Chris Moyle was to blame, but it wasn't long after Chris Moyle actually joined the crew that it sank. But yeah, there's lots of famous DJs and presenters who were actually on Radio Caroline at some point or another. And as I say, it was the go-to radio station. But you couldn't admit that you listened to it. So radio frequencies can be interfered with, but the place we're going to, there should be nothing to interfere with it. But anyway, let's get back to some of your stories. It's great to get your stories in. I'd rather you come on the show, come into the chat room and share your stories, but if you'd rather just send them through to me, then that's also fine as well. I've been contacted today to say that there's a psychic medium who quite wants to come on the show and give their side of it. As I say, we're not here to debunk anybody. We're here to listen to all sides and hopefully get some answers. But in the meantime, let's carry on with some of your stories. So the first one, I had a cousin who killed himself when I was very young, and I didn't have many memories of him. His mother, my auntie, always had problems after his death with drugs and alcohol. So, my kids are grown up, but even if they were to pass on, and especially if they were to take their own life, then, I'd be devastated myself. How I would deal with that, I don't know. But, hopefully I never have to find out either. But you just don't know how he would deal with it. So whilst I was at school, not whilst I was at school, as in he fell asleep while he was at school, but whilst at school, so it was quite a young age, I had a dream that there was a young man standing in my backyard, hysterically crying. He wouldn't come in, and he wouldn't tell me what was wrong, no matter how many times I asked him. And I was trying to calm him down, and I was getting pretty frantic when I was trying to calm him down, but he would have none of it. I was awoken from my dream by the phone ringing at 3 a.m. My aunt, the mother of the cousin who had killed himself, had finally overdosed and was now dead. At the funeral for my aunt, there was a picture on display. It was of her and my cousin who had took his own life. What creeped me out the most was the cousin was the man that I'd seen hysterically crying in my dream. Now this guy is saying that he never met, or he was very young, so he can't remember this cousin, and yet in his dream he'd actually seen his cousin as the man who was hysterically crying. So strange. I woke up one morning to find all the cabinet doors in the kitchen open. All the drawers, the fridge, the back door, they were all open. But one cabinet door was still closed. I slowly opened the cabinet to find a figurine of a black cat with the skull broken on it. The figurine was in my car the night before, and the car was still locked. Yep, keep the security deposit, we are out. This was the most menacing of the activity at that house, and I don't even drive down that block anymore. So this figurine of the cat was in his car, and it was locked, but then it was in his house, and obviously he decided, you can keep your security deposit for the house, I'm out of here. Does anything happen in your house which has spooked you out? There's nothing. I mean, I've done the whole paranormal activity stuff of setting up cameras in my house and that and the other. I've even had this spirit box switched on in my house, and I've tried it in different rooms and what have you, and nothing. Has anything happened in your house? Because I think if something was to happen in your house, would you then be able to remain at that property, or would it be, as this guy, thank you very much, I'm off. So here's another one. I am a non-believer in anything paranormal, but I had an unexplainable experience a few years ago that still freaks me out. My kids are upstairs asleep. My husband is in our room on the other side of the house, also asleep. I am in the TV room watching a movie on the TV. We're both avid gamers, my husband and I, and but we don't play split screen, so we have two large flat screen TVs mounted to the wall next to each other. They actually take up the whole wall. Mine is on the right and my husband's is on the left. There are no lights on it in the media room, which means the TV is one big black reflective surface. I'm watching my show when I see a shadow reflected on my husband's TV that is large enough to be my 6'3" husband. And it appears that they're peeking in the door of the TV room, just for a few seconds. And then when he doesn't see anything, I look around, but no one is there. I immediately get up and walk down the hall into the living room. No one's there either. I go up the stairs and see that both of the children's doors are shut. I would have heard them coming down the stairs anyway. So then I go directly across the house to find my husband fast asleep. I search the entire house. All of the doors and windows are locked, and the security system shows that they haven't been opened since it was all set. And I still, to this day, don't know what it was. But every time I think about it, I get goosebumps. Goosebumps? Goosebumps. Yeah. Reflections are a bit difficult. Did you actually see reflection? Was it a figment of imagination? As I say, we're not here to debunk anything. But some things that are unexplainable can be explained. Whether that was a figment of your imagination, whether it was, you caught something out of the corner of your eye that moved or whatever, or whether it's paranormal. Remember, the answer could always be paranormal. And I'm just giving an opinion of what it could be otherwise. But out of all of the answers, the paranormal one will always still be there. So anyway, for 4 years, we lived in a house. I was there between the ages of 12 and 16. But I always felt there was something not right. In the back of the house was my parents' office that had a sliding door leading to outside. It's a bit like these patio doors, these glass doors that you get, which you can slide. Often I would be up late on my mum's computer, and I swear that I could feel someone standing near the door, and in the dark screen reflection of the computer, I could see a tall shadow. First I passed it off as a pot plant, but it was too tall, and it always looked like it was hunched over. One night my friend stayed over and we slept in the upstairs lounge room. From this room you could actually see every bedroom and the open bathroom. The streetlight would shine into the bathroom, and my friend whispered to me, "What is that tall thing you have in the bathroom?" We both saw a tall, hunched figure. But we never mentioned it again. Another night, my brother and I had friends stay over, and we were all downstairs when we heard the upstairs floorboards start to creak, as it sounded like someone was walking out of a bedroom and walking towards the stairs. There was nobody upstairs. All our friends were downstairs. Next summer, when we had some friends stay over, we slept outside near the trampoline. All of us noticed a tall, hunched figure in the dining room from the back sliding door. We stayed out all night as we were too scared to go inside. This next experience still gives me goosebumps. One night, I woke up super early to watch the World Cup. As I'm lying on my lounge, I see out of the corner of my eye, as clear as day, a girl in a white dress with brunette braided hair just sitting on the lounge. I only saw her for a second, and as soon as I turned to look at her, she'd gone. I turned all the lights on and just quietly ran around downstairs like a lunatic for about 15 minutes until I decided that going back upstairs to bed was a good idea. Have you experienced anything like that where you're in your house and you think you see something? The answer is, when Amy was 2 to 3, I was getting her ready for preschool. We were running late and I said, "Hurry up, we will be late." She replied, "It's only 5 to 9. We have loads of time." It was that time. I asked, "How do you know?" As she was too young to know how to read the time. She said the lady had told her. What lady? So yes, I mean, at 2 to 3, you wouldn't see a 5 to 9, would you? You would see, the it's whatever, the big hands on the 11, or if it's a digital clock, it would be 8:55. You wouldn't see a 5 to 9, especially at that age, because you wouldn't know what 5 to an hour meant, would you? And who was the lady? Now, they do say children are a little bit more susceptible to the paranormal than adults are. And it's always a strange one. So on to the next story. I was out on a farm when I was around 11-year-old. This farm was far away from any towns and cities. There was nothing really planted, so the ground was flat, except for a few mounds. Oh, someone's getting in the back of my throat. The time was around 11 p.m, and the only light we could see was the house lights. But past that, you couldn't see anything. As I say, it was surrounded by nothing. We were out on the porch of the house playing with a rugby ball, and one of us kicked it in the dark, and we didn't expect it to see it until the daytime, because nobody wanted to wander off into the pitch dark. However, a minute later, it comes flying at the house out of the dark and hits the front door. This freaked us all out, because all the adults were inside and all the workers were nowhere near, and I still, to this day, don't know who threw it. The thing about that is, just because you couldn't see it doesn't mean that there wasn't somebody there. Remember, it's an opinion, so before anybody goes, no, it must have been paranormal, it could well be. The answer's always, it could be paranormal. But, you know, if you can't see something, it doesn't mean that it exists. It didn't exist. Dad says both girls talked to the lady, but then they became older. The lady was not seen anymore. So yeah, like I said, children tend to be a bit susceptible to the paranormal or the imaginary friend or whatever. But if you've got two people who have seen the same person, I mean, could the younger one have been influenced by the older one? You know, or could there have been a lady there? It is a strange one, because obviously it's happened years ago, so there's no way of like investigating it. But you know, people have had. I can't personally remember having an imaginary friend. I may have done, but I can't personally remember having an imaginary friend, or even seeing something, you know, that wasn't there. But that doesn't mean that I didn't, and that doesn't mean that there wasn't. I just can't personally remember. Was it, like I say, was it an imaginary friend? Did this woman exist? Because both girls have seen it. I don't know. She may still be here, but does no harm, so she can stay. Well, that's maybe it. You know, it's maybe a happy spirit, because not all. This is what annoys me about Ed and Lorraine Warren stories. Every possession, or every time they come across a possession in a house, it's always something demonic. But that's not always the case. Some ghosts, a lot of like paranormal investigators say that some ghosts don't even know that they're ghosts. As far as they're concerned, they're living in a real world and we're not. Is that actually true? You know, are we living in a paranormal world? And if you see a spirit, is that the real world? Or, you know, are we seeing the paranormal when we see little snippets? Is there a glitch in the matrix, as it's called? And are we seeing a parallel world? It's a strange one, you know. Because I've had stories of people seeing people who they've never met, and then find out later on that, you know, such as the guy who was crying hysterically in the back garden, and then it turns out that it was the cousin who had passed away. So are we, you know, seeing a parallel world where this guy didn't die, he hadn't killed himself, but then he knew his mother had, so naturally he was crying hysterically because of, you know, that he's lost his mother. I don't know. Like I say, I mean, there's so many questions and there's so many parameters as far as answers are concerned. But then there's always that, you know, what is the answer? Do we need an answer? Is the other question. Are we just happy? You know, this lady who, Amy and Emily, the two of Diane's daughters, who have seen this lady, caused them no harm. You know, they were never harmed by her. The house was never disrupted. There was nothing. So, do we need an answer, or can we just, you know, accept that this lady existed? Yeah. So yeah, keep your stories coming in. So my husband's mum died when he was 11. One day we were at his grandma's house, and everyone had always told me stories of them seeing his mum around the house after she died. Just speaking about a lady in the house. I didn't believe it until there was one night. We were downstairs and I was about to head up to the bedroom to put on my pyjamas. I turned the corner out of the living room and I was at the bottom of the stairs when I saw someone walk past the top of the stairs. She had long brown hair, and the only people in the house at this time were myself, my husband, his grandma, and our infant daughter. I told them what he saw, and his grandma said, "Yeah, that's our Laurie." I didn't go upstairs to change for a few hours after that. So this woman is saying, you know, very similar to Diane's daughters, she saw a woman who she didn't know it was when she explained it's been her husband's mum. Now, stories like that I find a little bit difficult when they say, you know, I didn't know nothing about her and this, that, and the other. The reason being that I have photographs of my mother. So if I was to meet somebody and, you know, was to show them photographs, then they would see photographs of my mother. If they've been to the grandma's house, if the husband hasn't got photographs of his mother, and but they've been to the grandma's house, you go to any grandma's house and they've got pictures of their children as well as their grandchildren. I mean, you come to my house and I've got pictures of both my son and daughter and my grandson in my house. So you would come to my house and you would see them. So, you know, they're talking about her being there quite regularly. She's gone somewhere by herself, nighttime, quiet, and she saw what she believes to be his mum. Again, the answer could be paranormal, but it could also be just a figment of the imagination. And that's what I want everybody to realise about this show. We're not trying to prove anybody right, we're not trying to prove anybody wrong. We're trying to see, and that's the reason why we're going to investigate, to see if there's anything out there. You know, as the X-Files say, the truth is out there. I worked at a nursing home where we had a resident that we had recently put in the hospice. We would call him Norman to save his identity. Norman was a chain smoker, and that was basically the only thing that gave him any pleasure in life. It didn't matter that he had pneumonia and it was the middle of the winter. He was going to have his smoke. So I went into work around about 8 o'clock on a Saturday night to check something out. And I see Norman smoking in the parking lot with two other people who I didn't recognise. I don't think anything of it since this is a daily occurrence. People would come and visit them who I'd never met before. I went right by him and he casually looked at me before turning back to smoking. I'd finished what I had to do and then it was time for me to go home. The following Monday, during our morning meeting, the director of nursing announces that Norman had died sometime over the weekend. I made a comment about how sad that was, and and you do this all the time, don't you? When somebody tells you that somebody's died, you say, "But I just saw him on Saturday night," and that's exactly what this lady's saying. You know, she turned around and said, "But I just saw him smoking on Saturday night," and therefore it was strange. But you do say that. You know, the other one is you're joking. You know, as if somebody's going to joke about somebody dying. Or, as I say, you say, "Oh, such and such has died." You know, Norman's died. "Oh, well, I just saw him on Saturday," or, you know, "I was just talking to him in an Asda the other day," as if that makes a difference. The person still died, regardless of when you saw them. So anyway, I mentioned that I saw him on Saturday night, and it was really strange after seeing him that he'd gone. So my administrator turns pale and says to me, "Norman died on Saturday morning." Not believing him, I checked the nursing notes, and sure enough, Norman had died around 2 o'clock on Saturday morning, which meant I couldn't have seen him on Saturday evening. Again, if it's something that you saw all the time, did she actually see him, or was it just, you know, an echo of the past, as they call it, don't they? Could she have just seen Norman there, or could she have seen Norman and thought he was there? So anyway, one night a friend and I were watching a TV in the living room when a small orange and blue ball popped out of the wall. It floated horizontally for about 6 feet into the room, then lowered softly onto the coffee table and blinked out of existence about a foot above it. The whole thing lasted for about 7 or 8 seconds. We looked at each other to confirm that we'd both seen it, but we never ever figured out what it was. Now, again, 2 people have saw it, going back to what we said about Diane's children. 2 people have saw the same thing at the same time. Now, I know if there's something happens on the TV and you look away from it, you might have seen like the ball of light or whatever. But this is 2 people seeing the same thing. Could it be that something on the TV, it caused both their retinas to, you know, burn into the retina, this image, and they both saw it? Or could it be a light from outside reflected that they saw? Or could it be something a little bit more paranormal? The only problem that I have with things like this is there's no follow-up to it. Why would this ball of light, you know, hover above the coffee table, then disappear? If there's no follow-up to that story, why would it do that? What was the purpose behind it? And that's why some of these stories, whilst unexplainable, always leave the question of why? Why did it happen? Why did it, you know? But never mind. In my current house about 2 years ago, something happened in the middle of the night that I can't explain. It was about 1 a.m. and everyone in the house was asleep. All of a sudden, we were woken by everything that was electrical in the house turning on. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't a power surge, because I distinctly remember every phone ringing, including my cell phone. Well, isn't that exactly what a power surge is? When the power surges to everything and switches everything on. And I mean, I'm no electrician, so I can't comment whether that's what power surges do. Somebody might tell over, no, Paddy, a power surge would do this. And if you do know the answer, then please let me know. But yeah, power surges are things where, you know, the electricity goes through. I sometimes have the opposite in my house. I sometimes have, you know, the lights flicker or whatever. I've never actually had anything where everything comes on, but I have had things where everything's sort of dimmed or gone off. again, could be power surge, could be, the bulbs or whatever, I don't know. When I was about 8 years old, I was in the shower, and Dad says, unless the phones were not plugged in. Yeah. I suppose if the phones weren't plugged in, then it could be, how has that happened? Like I say, some of these stories, all the details are not there. But if all the details were there, then we'd probably, talk about one story a night because of all the writing I would have to go into it. So, we'll just have to take their word for it. When I was about 8 years old, I was in the shower and started hearing my name being called, which sounded like my mum. So I went out and asked what she needed, and she said she didn't see anything. We were the only ones in the house, and about a day later, I was sleeping for some reason. I woke up and looked to the side of my bed, where I saw a floating head, which was transparent. It was there for about a second or two, and then I sprinted away, called my parents, only returned to nothing. Days after, I would experience tapping on the windows, cupboard doors, open that were closed, and one day, it all just seemed to stop. Now, obviously she said she was sleeping, and then she woke up and she saw this floating head. Was she properly awake? Was she still, half asleep, half dreaming sort of thing? The tapping, I remember my mother saying when you heard things at night, like the stairs creaking and stuff like that, it was the house going to sleep. Because of the activity it had all day, it was obviously settling down, and the wood was, cracking back into place, and this, that, and the other. So was that the same? Cupboard doors open. Could that just be ill-fitting cupboard doors? I don't know. As I say, the answer could always be paranormal, but then you have other things that it could be as well. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. In the house I grew up in, there was one room where loads of weird and unexplainable stuff happened. This, however, happened to be my particular room. Now, Dave, who presents that show and the Essential Selection, and sometimes appears as a guest on this show, he lived in the Schooner Hotel in Almouth, and his bedroom was what people over the years have said has been the most paranormal active room in the hotel. Obviously it's in the living accommodation of the people who run the hotel, because it was Dave's mother and father were the landlord and landlady of the hotel when Dave lived there. So it must be just paranormal investigators who've actually gone to this particular room and checked it out and whatever. But yeah, apparently so same as this person, everything, the most unexplainable stuff happened in their room. One night when I was around 10, I woke up struggling to breathe. Some invisible force was holding my face down into the pillow. I struggled against it, but when I was on the verge of passing out, I felt whatever it was just let go of me. Some might brush this off just as sleep paralysis. I probably would have too if I wasn't able to move every other part of my body except for my head. When I moved away from home, I thought I'd get away from the weird stuff that seemed to happen around me, but I was wrong. Since moving into my new flat, I've been scratched across the waist. I was just minding my own business, getting ready for bed, when I felt a sharp sting, and when I checked in the mirror, it was as if I'd been bit or something, but nope, there was a big red claw mark. I didn't have a cat at this point. The same night I was lying in bed listening to music, I felt like I had been staring at. I glanced over at the door to my room and my heart stopped. There were these two bright green eyes staring at me. The pupils seemed to reflect the lights coming in from the window, pretty much the same way as a cat's would. I dived under the cover like that would save me from the demon at my door. 10 minutes later, when I looked up again, the eyes were gone. Have they answered their own question by saying it reflected the light like a cat? Has a cat getting in the house? Now, before people turn around and go, well, that would never happen, I once went out of my house to go to the bin. Now, if you know my house, the front door, which is what I walked out of, you have to sort of turn left and then left again to get to the bin. So you're actually behind the house as it was. You're not where the front door is. And I do leave the door open. And obviously presenting a show like this and watching some of the shows that I watch, I often, jokingly say to myself, I'm going to come in one night and there's going to be somebody, sleeping under my bed, or, they're going to be stood behind the door waiting for me, sort of thing. But anyway, there was this one particular night, I went, put something in the bin, I'd left the door open, come in, close the door, lock the door, etc. Went about me business, watching the TV, maybe sell a cup of coffee, this, that, and the other. Just went about normal nighttime routine, whatever. And then I decided to go to bed, as you do. Walked up the stairs to go to bed. Opened my bedroom door. Well, I'm saying open my bedroom door. Pushed my bedroom door open. It was already ajar, and it always is. So I don't look at me bedroom if it's a bedroom door if it's ajar and go, well, my bedroom door's ajar, because I don't always close it when I come out. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It's not something I do all the time. So if my bedroom door isn't closed, I don't really think about it. But anyway, I went in to get into bed, went into the room, switched the light on, and lying on my bed was a cat. Not my cat, somebody else's cat. So obviously, in the period that I'd gone out to put something in the bin, this cat had gone in. Well, if you walk through my front door, the first thing you come to is a set of stairs. So obviously, you would shoot up the stairs if you're a cat and you've darted into somebody's house. So they darted into my house, obviously my room out of all the rooms upstairs, because it tends to be the only one that I do leave ajar. I've got a 3-bedroom house, and in that house there's 2 bedrooms, which are, they haven't lived here for about 10 years, but they're still classed as my children's room. We have the little bedroom and we have a bigger bedroom. The little bedroom's Aaron's, the larger bedroom's Amber's. But they don't get used very much, so the doors on them are closed pretty much all the time. The bathroom, it gets closed when I come out after being in the bath or whatever. And the toilet, pretty much the same. So the only door really that's sort of left ajar is my bedroom, because it's the one that I'm in and out of the most. So obviously this cat darted upstairs, saw this room was open, and went into it. Saw a nice comfy bed, and decided to fall asleep on it. It was hours after I'd been out of the bin, so it wasn't like, 10 minutes or whatever. So this cat had been lying on my bed for hours. It was quite a cute cat as well, but obviously it wasn't my cat, so I had to turf it out of the house. But her turning around and saying that she saw these bright green eyes that would reflect the light, something like a cat. It could have been a cat. The scratches on the side, they're a little bit harder to explain, but looking at it from an alternative point of view, she said that she thought she'd been bit. So had she, as you do when you get bit by an insect, had she scratched it, subconsciously without thinking, just scratched it, and then when she looked in the mirror, there's the scratch marks. What sort of nails did she have? Did she have them acrylic nails that pretty much are like claws, that come to a point and whatever? But as I said, the answer could always be something paranormal. I'm just giving her an opinion of alternative things that it could have been. So at my grandparents' house, there's a laundry chute or an air vent in their bathroom, which has a metal door on it. And this leads to the basement. A few years ago, I was home alone for some reason, and when I was in the bathroom, I heard my name being called through the vent. I was thoroughly creeped out for the rest of the day, but I never told anyone about it. I do believe in the paranormal, but I like to think that was just my imagination. Well, it led to the basement. How many people... I know, we used to do it as kids. We used to try and scare each other. There's a famous incident in our family, shall we say, where my two sisters, I got a life-size, luminous skeleton, which obviously you had to charge up with a torch or the light or whatever. And my two sisters decided it would be a funny idea to charge up this skeleton, so it was, shining brightly, the luminous was shining brightly, and then take it into our parents' bedroom and hang it directly behind the door. So if you open the door, the first thing you see would be this luminous skeleton. So because you had to be in the, well, not in the room, but you had to open the door to switch the light on. I know some houses have lights on the outside, but this particular house, like my house, the lights are in the inside of the room. So you have to open the door to switch the lights on. So anyway, they then started shouting at me. So I've gone running up the stairs, as you do, and, being who I am, being the only boy out of the three of us, I'm giving it all this, bounding up the stairs, all this, big boy stuff and whatever. Burst into the bedroom. Well, obviously I burst this door wide open to be now greeted by a 6-foot luminous skeleton. Now, I don't know if you've ever experienced that instant fear of seeing a 6-foot skeleton floating in a room which is pitch black. But let's just say it is not the most pleasant experience I've ever had. I then obviously darted away and hid under the dining table because I just saw a 6-foot skeleton floating in my parents' bedroom. So going back to this story about hearing a voice from a vent which leads to the basement, how many, I know for a fact that I would have definitely at some point been in that basement, going, Diane, Sonia, whatever. I know for a fact that I would have done that. And I know for a fact, going off the story of the skeleton, that my sisters would probably do it to me. So she's never mentioned it to anybody. So what's to say that isn't what happened? Has somebody, been there and tried to spook her out by, calling her name because I know, as I said, we've done it right away through, hiding in the dark and, jumping out at somebody, boom, sort of thing. So yeah, and Diane says she definitely would, and you would. It's the sort of thing that you do with your siblings, isn't it? You try and scare them. As I say, there was this incident with the skeleton. There's been incidents where, you would hide from your sisters, and you would obviously, or a tape recording. Yeah, that's the other thing. You could tape record your voice, seeing, somebody's name in different ways, and then leave that in the basement to play, and So yeah, as I say, it could be paranormal. I'm just saying that's the sort of thing, speaking from experience, that's the sort of thing that I know my family would do, and a few other families would do, where you try and, for years, we used to, myself and my ex-wife, used to walk down this really dark path, and I'm talking every Sunday night, because we used to go to a pub quiz with my mother, and to get from my house to my mother's house, you had to walk down this path, which took you past the local cemetery. It was pitch black, and every single night on the way back, because it was like, obviously after 11 o'clock, after the pub had closed, it was pitch black. I would then hide, run away from my wife and hide, and then she would get up to me, and then, she'd be like, "Paddy man, stop it," and then she would get up to me and I'd jump out, and scare the living daylights out of her. And so, even as an older person, I've done it with my kids, not, like sort of really badly, but I've done the jumping out. My kids have done it to me. Bursting the paper bag behind your head, and, or sneaking up on you, or hiding somewhere, and then jumping out on you, hiding in the cupboard in your bedroom. So I'm not saying that this is definitely the case for this person at the grandparents' house, but it's definitely something that I and many of my family would do, and probably many of yours would as well. So there we go. But anyway, let's have your final version, or your final story from the Cabinet of Curiosities, and then I'll come back and wind up the show. I'll see you shortly.
Our world is full of the unexplainable. And if history is an open book, all of these amazing tales are right there on display, just waiting for us to explore. Welcome to the Cabinet of Curiosities. If we were in an actual Cabinet of Curiosities, a massive room full of oddities and wonders that we could browse and admire, I would probably lead you over to a corner where two paintings hung on the wall. Looking up, you would recognize each of the subjects immediately: Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy. I don't need to tell you how similar these two men were, right? You can put the pieces together yourself. Both served as presidents of the United States, and both were assassinated while in office. They each represented sad moments in American history, where great leaders were struck down before their time. For the generations that went through the aftermath of these tragedies, they were foundational, unforgettable events. But you don't know everything, such as why I might have placed their portraits here, in a place where you come to find the unusual and unexplainable. Don't worry though. What sort of tour guide would I be if I didn't reveal it all to you? First, it's helpful to look at the numbers. Lincoln and Kennedy both served in Congress before ascending to the presidency, and each of them was elected to those roles in years that ended in 46. When they were elected to the White House, both of them did so in years ending in 60. Weird, right? It gets weirder though. Kennedy was killed in the 7th car of his motorcade, while Lincoln was shot in theater box number 7. Both men were shot in the head. Both assassinations happened on a Friday. Even the killers were similar. John Wilkes Booth escaped the theater and was found in a barn, sort of a 19th century warehouse. Lee Harvey Oswald fled from a warehouse and was caught in a theater, and both of them were killed before they could go to trial. When it was all over, each man was succeeded by their vice president, as is the tradition. Except both of those men were named Johnson. Each were born in years ending 08, and each were from the South. I know, it's easy to look at a lot of that and just shrug. Coincidences happen, right? Especially when they have a century to line up. And counting the letters in a person's name is pretty weak, according to some. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I'll leave that up to you. One last thing. It's said that Lincoln had a dream about his assassination. In it, he found himself standing in the White House, which was fully decorated for a state funeral. There, in the East Room, he could see a body laid out for burial. "Who is dead in the White House?" Lincoln asked one of the nearby soldiers guarding the body. "The president," came the soldier's reply. "Killed by an assassin." Here's the odd thing, though. Other than dreaming about a murdered president, of course, Lincoln told some friends about his dream a short time after it happened, and he told them something else. It turns out the body on display was not him, but another man that Lincoln did not recognize. Knowing what we do about the deep similarities between Lincoln and Kennedy, it wouldn't hurt to stop and wonder, and ask the most obvious question of all the questions yet. Was Kennedy the man that Lincoln dreamed about? When he checked into the hotel on Long Island, he did so under a false name. It was April 17th, 1938, and the man listed as Albert C. White was very much not who he claimed to be. He was actually the 28-year-old nephew of legendary steel magnate Andrew Carnegie, and even shared his name. He was Andrew Carnegie Whitfield. He paid in advance, $4 for a single night, if you're curious what hotel rates were like in 1938, and deposited his belongings in the room before taking a car to the nearby Roosevelt Field Airport, where he had a plane waiting for him. It was silver and red, very flashy and very noticeable, and he planned to take it for just a quick flight. His destination, he claimed, was an airfield in Brentwood, New York, about 22 miles away. He had plenty of fuel, perfect weather, a heavily populated landscape to fly over, and hundreds of hours of flight time under his belt. He was happily married, was enjoying success as an executive for a large company, and was even planning to relocate his family to a better home at the end of the month. He had everything going for him, on land and in the air. And then, he vanished. When they searched his hotel room, they found a lot of things to raise questions. There were records of a phone call to his own home. His clothing was still there in the room too, along with his monogrammed cufflinks. Oddly, he had even brought along 2 life insurance policies and several stock and bond certificates that had his name on them. But Andrew Whitfield was nowhere to be found. It didn't make sense, and no matter how hard they tried, the authorities couldn't locate him or his red and silver airplane. They had simply vanished into thin air. One other thing, though. Remember that phone call he made to his home from the hotel room? Well, it was unusual for 2 reasons. First, when no one answered, the operator who was trying to connect their call overheard him mutter, "Well, I'm going to carry out my plan." Weird, right? Not as weird as the second detail. That call, it seems, took place while his family was out of the house. They were out of the house because they'd gone to join the search party, looking for him. The call, you see, didn't happen before his flight. It was placed hours after he vanished.
So there we go. Now I've heard the story of Lincoln having a dream about the assassination. Um, and obviously, if you were to have a dream about yourself lying there, you would know it was you, wouldn't you? You know, you'd be able to say it was you. So if he's asking who is this person, then it obviously isn't the him that he's seeing. So did he see Kennedy? Did Kennedy ever go to the White House after he was assassinated? I don't know. I mean, he might have. His body might have been laid in state at the White House or something. I honestly don't know, so I can't comment on that. I would have to research that. But was it Kennedy that he saw, or did he just have a dream? Because I mean, his life was in danger because he was a very controversial president. Not controversial as you would think. I mean, he wasn't controversial like the one they've just getting rid of, um, but he's very controversial because of the fact of he wanted to end slavery, and that was something that, especially the southern states of the U.S., didn't want to do. Um, so he knew his life was in danger because he wasn't the first president of the U.S. to be assassinated. People had been assassinated years before. Politicians had been assassinated years before. So he was in a situation where he could possibly be assassinated. So was that on his mind, and he dreamt about it? But then they say that if you die in your dream, you die in real life. So is that why the person that he saw was him, but wasn't him? Because they also say, and this is from dream experts, I mean, I don't know how you become a dream expert, but this is from dream experts, that you can't make up a face in a dream. Your mind doesn't have the ability to make up a face. So every face that you see, you have seen in real life. Your mind isn't capable of actually performing the construction of a human face. So if you dream about somebody, you may not recognize them, but you have seen their face. It could be somebody that you've walked past, somebody you've seen in a cafe, a restaurant, cinema, whatever. But that's who you see. And you hear a lot of people say, you know, I had a dream last night that me and you did this, but you weren't you, you were, you know, Ryan Reynolds or, you know, somebody else. And it's because that's what your mind apparently does. It can't make up faces. So, you know, you describe a face that, or you dream a face that you've already seen. So it wouldn't, working on that principle, it couldn't have been Kennedy that he saw, because obviously he couldn't have seen Kennedy. But, you know, I don't know. As I say, every answer could be the paranormal. Doesn't mean that it was, but it could be. And that's the thing about it. So anyway, we haven't got long to go. A couple of things before I sort of do a couple more stories and then we'll leave you. Tomorrow night, we will be back. The Paranormal Experience will be back. It'll be 3 hours tomorrow night. We're on an hour earlier, so a little bit longer. So we'll get more stories in, etc. That begins at 8 o'clock tomorrow till 11. So we're still on till 11, but we're an hour earlier. And that'll be every week. And then, as I mentioned, every other week, starting from the 10th of July, we will be investigating some location. We still want to hear from yourselves, so if there's a place that you want us to come and investigate, then, you know, we're quite willing to do that. Or even just to be there and present the programme from there. We've got this psychic, but quite willing to talk to other psychics. So if you're a psychic medium out there and you fancy coming on and telling us some stories, and maybe even do a bit of tarot reading with myself, or whatever you do, then I'm quite willing to do that. So we've got all that coming. Obviously, Amber Radio is still out there. We're still trying to sort out phones, because I would like to set up, and there'll be nothing greater than if I was in a spooky location, and we had phone-ins where you were phoning me and telling me some of your stories. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's great to read some of these stories. Very, very interesting. As I said, paranormal is always an answer, but it's not always the answer, is what I would say. But it is always a answer that could be used. So that's obviously the Paranormal Experience. Twice a week, Wednesdays 8 till 11, Wednesdays 9 till 11, Thursdays 8 till 11, and then every other, obviously I'll tell you on the Wednesday and Thursday when we're going to do the investigation that particular week, but it'll be every other Thursday. So next week will be the first one on the 10th, and then it'll be a fortnight later, which will be, I'll just have a quick look at the calendar. So if we do one on the 10th, the next one will be the 24th, the next one will be the 7th of August, and so on and so forth. Obviously, if for whatever reason we can't do the investigation that particular night, then that will also be mentioned as well. And we may change it to another night. There may be some places where we can't live stream from, so we'll do a recording, but it will, wherever we do it from, and whenever we do it, the recording will be exactly what we see and hear. There'll be no, most haunted or ghost adventure type of stuff where we will, make stuff up. If it's not there, I mean, as I said, I'm the skeptic, so I'm highly unlikely to make up a story of a ghost appearing when I don't believe in them myself. So everything will be above board. If we go to places and we hear stuff, we'll report that. We will show you, and you can listen to anything we see, we will show you. But if we go to places and we experience nothing, we will also show you that. And again, for you skeptics out there, if we go somewhere and we get nothing, it doesn't prove the paranormal doesn't exist. And the same with you who are believers. If we go somewhere and we don't get anything, it doesn't mean that we're saying no, paranormal activity doesn't exist. I mean, that's what I'm saying anyway, because as a skeptic, that's what I'd say. But if we get nothing from somewhere, I'm not saying that just because we didn't get anything doesn't mean that it's not. The thing I find is, and it's spoiled ghost hunting, lots of people do it, but they feel they have to find something. As I say, Ed and Lorraine Warren went down the route of everything was demonic possession. The Annabelle doll, the original story of the Annabelle doll was that a psychic medium said it was a trapped girl. Ed and Lorraine turned up and it was a demonic possession. So what they're saying is that psychic medium was wrong. And it turned into one of the biggest stories ever as far as the paranormal is concerned. I mean, people literally. I was watching a video the other day of the story of the Annabelle doll, and people were actually in the comments apologising to a doll that they'd watched the story. You know, they were actually saying, you know, please forgive me, Annabelle, for watching this video. That's how big this story has become, that people are so paranoid about this doll that they apologising on a video that a doll isn't going to see for watching a video about the doll. Robert the doll is another one. You are supposed to ask this doll's permission if you want a photograph taken with the doll. So if you go into the museum where Robert the doll is, and you fancy, you know, taking a selfie with Robert in the background, or even just taking a photo of Robert, you have to ask the doll its permission. Well, I'll say one thing about that. I will never ever ask a doll permission if I'm lucky enough to go and visit, because I would like to go to these museums. If I'm lucky enough to go, then I will take a photograph of the doll, Robert. You know, whether it's a selfie, whether it's a photograph, I will take a photograph, and I'll not ask his permission. I don't ask a gorilla their permission when I go to the zoo. I'll take a picture of a gorilla. Robert is exactly the same. He's, when I say exactly the same, obviously he's not, because he's a doll. But what I mean is, he is publicly on display for me to see. So therefore, I will take a photograph. If I'm lucky enough to go to the Warren's Museum of the Occult, and I see Annabelle, I don't think you're allowed to take photographs. But if you are, I will take a photograph of Annabelle. I'll not ask her permission. I'll not apologise for looking at her. I will go and I will take this photograph. If something happens, then we can say, oh, you know, Paddy's died, so therefore it must be true. But I will not ask a doll permission. And I, you know, but some people take it really, really serious. And as I say, I was reading some of the comments. Some of the comments were like, it's a load of rubbish. This, that. And, but others were actually apologising to Annabelle for watching this video. And there was quite a few. It wasn't just one person going, you know, being a bit sarcastic or whatever. There was quite a few comments saying, you know, I apologise for watching this video. You know, please forgive me for watching this video. You know, some of them were like, can I have permission to watch this video, Annabelle, and stuff like this. The thing that gets me most about the Annabelle story, and obviously I've got 5 minutes left, so I'm not going to be telling you any more of your stories. We'll have to wait till tomorrow night for that. But the thing that gets me about the Annabelle story is nobody, except for the Warrens, have told the story of Annabelle. Now, I could be completely wrong, you know, but if the 3 people who were supposedly involved, so you've got the boyfriend and the 2 roommates who were supposed to be involved in the story of Annabelle, you would have thought at least one of the 3 would have come forward, because these Annabelle stories are making an absolute fortune. You know, I mean, the whole Conjuring universe is worth more than $1 billion. So you would have thought at least, you know, the boyfriend, because, you know, what us boys are like, you would have thought at least he would have come forward and gone, I'm the boyfriend from the Annabelle story, you know, give me a few quid. But yeah, nobody's come forward. Nobody's ever mentioned this story. The Robert the Doll story, it depends on who you listen to. There's 2 or 3 different stories, because there's one where he receives the doll from his nursemaid, another one he receives a doll from an auntie, Another one receives a doll from his granddad. So, there's different ways of how he got this doll. Whereas if I buy a doll for my grandson, then the story would be he got that off his granddad. That would be the story. It wouldn't be he got that off his nursemaid, he got that off his aunt, he got that off whoever. It would be he got that off his granddad, and that would be the story. So it always amazes me when people do that, when they give the old, when a story is completely different. And as I say, the Annabelle story has always baffled me why nobody's come forward. As I said earlier on, it could be just that they want to be anonymous. But money sort of changes people, doesn't it? If I was involved in the Annabelle story, then I'd be pretty much wanting some of that cut of the Annabelle stuff. So I'd be like, yeah, I'm Paddy McGuff. I'm the boyfriend from that story. But nobody, not even the boyfriend, has come forward. Not even any of the roommates. But you've also got nobody's come forward to deny it, as well as nobody's come forward to. So there's nobody come forward and said, no, you're wrong, that Annabelle story didn't exist. But you've also got nobody come forward to prove it. So it's one of those, is it true, is it not? And the people not coming forward don't prove that it's real or not. It's just because they may like, I don't want to be involved. It was a scary thing. I want to keep well away from it. Or, as I said, if it was me, I'd want a cut of that $1 billion. I'd want a backhand, not a lot, maybe $1 million or something. But anyway, that's the end of the show. As I say, I'll be back tomorrow evening with 3 hours worth of paranormal. So keep your stories coming in. I've got a good few stories, but that doesn't mean that I'm not looking for more. So keep your stories coming in. Let me know anything. Come into the chat room by all means, and have a chat with us about the different things. Because that's obviously, it's direct. As Diane did earlier on, told us the story of our two daughters. It's direct and it's there straight away, which is another reason why I want the phone calls set up, because you can directly tell me your story and other people. Whereas at the moment what I'm doing is I'm getting your story second hand, as it was. But yeah. So anyway, I shall see you tomorrow from 8 o'clock for 3 hours of the paranormal activity. Hopefully you've enjoyed tonight. If you haven't, then, don't tell your friends. If you have, do tell your friends. But I'll see you tomorrow night anyway. But until then, it's good night from me, and I'll see you tomorrow.